Bonjour. Bonjour, bonjour. Bonjour, Deborah. Glass of Lillet sounds like a great idea. I'll drink later. How is everyone? Good? So I'm sure the comments will scroll by. I think I'm live because I saw somebody pop up. Well, I want to wish you welcome. This is Véro, French girl in Seattle online. This is Apéro with Véro. Bonjour, bonjour. And we are doing number 11 of Apéro with Véro. And this is going to be the last one for a little while because I've been doing these Apéro every single Saturday for the last 3 months. And it was perfect during the lockdown. But as you know, France has been deconfined, as we say in French, déconfiné. And so I need to get some of my Saturdays back. But don't worry, you know me, you know I'm good at sharing fun stories, videos, content on France. So you will be able to go back to the YouTube channel now after this one and view, you can watch all the replays for the Apéro with Véro that we've done over the last 3 months. So thank you so much. Bonjour, bonjour mes amis, I see your messages. Thank you so much for sticking with me through 3 months. It's been really fun. I've learned a lot during those presentations and I hope you have too. Bonjour Jacqueline, merci. And so for those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Véronique, Véro, and I am known online as French Girl in Seattle. And I have been in social media sharing information about Paris and France for more than a decade now, actually. And I have a blog called FrenchGirlInSeattle.com. I share information every day on Facebook, on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, so you're watching me on YouTube now, and I hope that you will all subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the little bell so you get the notifications. And if you like this video, please give me likes. YouTube loves those likes and that traffic. Yes, hit the like button. Listen to Jacqueline. Merci, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is the best. She's great. She's been my assistant through all these, helping me out through the tech hurdles. And I really appreciate your help, Jacqueline. And I appreciate everybody who's shown up for 12 weeks to do these. So just out of curiosity, how many of you have seen the videos that I've shared from Paris this week? I pre-recorded 2 guided walks in Paris that I shared earlier this week. One on Ile de la Cité downtown and one on Ile Saint-Louis. They are on my YouTube channel. And then I also did 2 impromptu live walks, one by the Hotel de Ville on my way home one day and another one in La Rue Montorgueil, the same day that the Café Terraces reopened. So I hope you've been there for all of these. 2 were on Facebook and 2 have been shared on YouTube. So I will continue doing those videos. My plan is to continue with this and sharing information about Paris, France, and the French culture. That's my plan. It just might not be it might not be every Saturday as it has been for the last 3 months because I need to catch up on life a little bit, if you know what I mean. So today we are back for Apéro number 11, and number 11 is really a rerun of number 9. What happened is when I did these on Instagram, as you may recall, sometimes I could not get the replays. And so last week I did the Périgord one with Josephine Baker, which was hugely popular. So we did it again. And this time we were able to get a replay, which is on YouTube now. So make sure to see that. And this week I'm redoing the one on the wonderful guy known as Coluche. So if you have already seen the presentation 2 weeks ago, I have worked on it. I have added photos and I have actually expanded on the last section because I thought that in light of what's happening around the world because of COVID-19, I thought the information in that last section was very relevant and I worked on developing that section yesterday. Bonjour, bonjour. I see all the friendly bonjour. It makes me feel good to see all these names pop up from all over the world. I even have people watching from Australia, which is amazing. They're up pretty late. or pretty early, depending on how you look at it, I suppose. So today we are going to talk about an enfant terrible, as we say. And he was an enfant terrible, all right, but he also had a very big heart. And he did some pretty amazing things, especially at the end of his life. He died very young, and he died more than 30 years ago. But the French just love him. And if you mention his name to French people, most of them will smile when you say his name for a variety of reasons. But today we will explore why he has made such a, what should I call it, a lasting impression, left a lasting impression on French society. So I see we have about 66 people who joined, and I think we're ready to start. What do you say? Ready to start? You have your drinks? You're ready? Bonjour, Terry. Okay, I know some of you it's the morning, some of you it's midday, some of you who knows what time it is. Yes, the enfant terrible. That's his nickname. Well, that's the one I gave him. He had others. Je suis prête, says Terry. Okay, well, if you are ready, what we're going to do, I want to make sure that there's not too much glare. So I'll turn off these things. And, okay. And now I'm going to switch around. Where's my switch around thingy? I can't see it. Oh, it's hidden. It's here. I think it's here. There it is. Okay. So, now by now you're used to the format, right? A little bit artisanal. I am glad the quality is better on YouTube. Is the screen okay? Are the comments are not hiding the screen? It's fine. Is it good for everyone? Okay, well, Deborah, tackle that Lillet by all means. I won't be able to drink for a little while, but hey, Tony from California. Okay, it's good. All right, perfect then. Let's get started if it's good. Here is Coluche, my friends. So this is the story of a guy, slightly moved to the right, says Lachlan. Like this. Is it good? I just moved it to the right. So I hope it's good for you. Okay, cafecito ready. We're good. Perfect. Okay. So this is the story of a guy named Michel Colucci, but he was known in France as Coluche, C-O-L-U-C-H-E. And for more than a decade, Coluche was one of the most recognized, most beloved French personalities. He had a very versatile talent because he went from the cabaret to the movies. He even won an Academy Award in France. He went from stand-up comedy to singing, from the radio to the TV. So for a little over a decade, Coluche was everywhere. But Coluche was really known for his irreverent attitude towards politics, towards the establishment, and he incorporated all this into much of his material. I'm glad it's working. Yes, we've actually made a connection between Coluche and Robin Williams when I did this last time. There are a lot of similarities between their careers and their personal lives. I think they were a little similar as far as their personalities went. Coluche was from a working class family and he grew up in poverty. He never forgot that. He never forgot that. And in the later part of his life, I must remind you, he died at 41, so he was very young. In the later part of his life, he really advocated for social justice and decided to take things into his own hands because he didn't trust politicians to do it. And he launched a project that was really groundbreaking at the time and that endures more than 30 years after his death. Okay? So, today, if you show this to any French person, they will know well. Anyone over 25 probably. Though the younger folk could surprise me. But if you show this, the blue overalls and the yellow shoes, people would know instantly who you're talking about. And in fact, when local people in the town where he grew up, south of Paris, south of the 14th arrondissement, on the other side of the Beltway, you know, the périphérique. It's called Montrouge. When they decided a few years ago to have a tribute to Coluche's statue, all they needed to put up was a statue of the famous overalls and the shoes. And everybody who walks by that statue knows exactly who it is or what it is for. Here is Michel Colucci. C'est l'histoire d'un mec. You'll hear me say that several times. C'est l'histoire d'un mec. This is the story of a guy named Coluche. But we need to go back in time a little bit. He was the son of an Italian immigrant, and his father died when he was 3. So he grew up in Montrouge, where his mother and his sister moved. It was an interesting life for him. He lived in a cité, which is a housing project. And when he grew up, right after World War II, Montrouge was really a working class neighborhood. He spent a lot of time in the streets playing with his friends. He got in a lot of trouble at school and outside of school. You might say that he was a juvenile delinquent, and you would be right. He got in a lot of trouble and he quit school at 16. And from that day on, he started working odd jobs. Coluche probably had more jobs for the next 10, 15 years than most of us will have in a lifetime. He worked in a pharmacy. He worked in a florist shop. In fact, his mom ran a florist shop for a long time. He sold fruits and vegetables at markets. He pumped gas, you name it. But no job really stuck. He didn't find his passion there. And he got fired quite a lot. He was a bit rebellious, you might say. When he talked about his childhood, he said, "When I was little at home, the hardest time was the end of the month, especially the last 30 days of the month." And this is typical Coluche humor. It's witty, it's pretty clever, and at the same time, it depicts something that's not really funny or fun, right? He discovered that he loved music early on. His mother gifted him with a guitar for his birthday when he was very young, when he was a teenager. And he taught himself the guitar, and he started performing, especially on the left bank. Remember, this was the 1960s. A lot was happening on the music scene in the world. The Beatles, and Coluche was all wrapped up in that. And remember also that he came of age in the mid-1960s. We've talked about this in Apéro number 6. Remember when I took you to 1968 Paris through a song called Paris s'éveille, Paris is Waking Up by Jacques Dutronc? We saw how in 1968, around the world really, but especially in France, a lot of young people like Coluche felt really disconnected with the conservative France of their parents that was led by Charles de Gaulle, who was president then. And a lot was happening then. You may remember we talked about all the social unrest that year that peaked in May and June with the student protests in the Latin Quarter, especially the police trying to push back, and then the movement turning into a national strike that almost brought down the de Gaulle presidency. So it lasted on and off the whole year, 1968, and a lot came out of it. Society changed after that. This was a time when the French Parisians built barricades again. There were barricades in the streets of Paris. Once again, you see all the cobblestones that the demonstrators, the students had ripped out of the ground so they could build barricades as well as throw at the police. So it was an interesting time, and it also encouraged his very rebellious personality. But Coluche eventually found his crowd, his first tribe. In 1969, he was one of the founding members of a performing group known as Le Café de la Gare, the cafe of the train station. At the time, they were located in the 14th arrondissement. Down the road, they moved to the Marais on the right bank. But if you picture the Café de la Gare, it was just a bunch of aspiring actors and comedians who got on the stage. They were bleachers. They charged entrance fees, but it was all very collaborative and based on improv. For Coluche, it was a really important time. You see him right here on the right-hand side. I don't know what he's doing to that guy's to that guy's belt. This is the other gentleman who founded it with him. And you recognize, if you're French and you know some of the French actors from the 70s, you would recognize here a very young Patrick de Véro, who was an extremely gifted actor and became really close friends with Coluche, and the pretty Miu Miu, who was his girlfriend at the time and who also became a very popular actress. You may have seen her in movies with Gérard Depardieu and so forth. So some of them actually became quite famous. The problem was, yes, Miu Miu, that's right. The problem was Coluche already had a drinking problem. He could be quite violent, and one day there was a big fight and he was kicked out. And all of his life he fought addictions, alcohol definitely, and also drugs. So we'll talk about that down the road a little bit. But in the early 1970s, he did what a lot of young actors did. He took small parts in TV shows, he did TV and radio ads. His solo career really started in 1974. I want to show you one more picture of Coluche on the right here, posing really proudly on one of his early motorcycles. He loved speed and motorcycles all his life. Next to him is Miu Miu, the young actress, his girlfriend at the time, and the famous singer Georges Moustaki. So you can see that he made a lot of buddies there. C'est l'histoire d'un mec. This was the title of his first famous, his breakthrough performance, his breakthrough skit. And what it said was, this is the story of a guy. So Coluche, it was an interesting skit if you ever watch it, because he doesn't really say much in the skit, but the combination of the funny faces he makes and the stuff he says and the way he delivers the lines, just people were just cracking up. And so he took the stage by storm. His first solo performance or show was called My Farewell to Musical, which was really gutsy for somebody who was only 30 years old and was doing his first show. So that was the start of, I would say, a very successful, let's see, 74, so a very successful 6 years or so. And pretty soon he was everywhere. He was in movies. He did several movies, and he was lucky because the movies did really well. This was a good choice for him. L'aile ou la cuisse. L'aile ou la cuisse, which means roughly the wing or the thigh, was a hilarious comedy with the popular actor, hugely popular actor, Louis de Funès. And the movie worked because it talked about food. And in France, if you talk about food, chances are you will be successful. And the movie was actually clever too, because Coluche was the son of this guy who was a very gastronomic critic. And the enemy of this guy was a guy who is very successful at selling industrial food. And at the time, this reflected what was happening in French society. McDonald's had just arrived on the French market, and it was the start of what the French refer to as la malbouffe. La mauvaise bouffe, bad food or fast food or industrial food. And pretty soon, Coluche was everywhere. There they are in the movie. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's really fun. Here is Coluche in front of Coluche, 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 Coluche. You could see Coluche on TV, you could hear him on the radio. What he did really well is that he created a brilliant stage persona. This was Coluche as he appeared for the first time on stage. He went to a used second-hand store, bought these Oshkosh overalls that really weren't flattering on him because he was a little bit round, and wore a yellow t-shirt, the yellow shoes, and this funky hairstyle, and the red nose, because, you know, everybody knows clowns have a red nose. His style on stage, so he looked like a clown, looked sweet enough. He was quite shy in real life, but his style as a performer exploded really quickly. Coluche's style, because he was from, you know, the working class, he hadn't spent a lot of time in school, he had played in the streets a lot. He was funny, but he used very crude language. And in France, it was new because he spoke freely. He had a caustic wit. He was very provocative. He was one of the first major comedians to regularly use profanities as a source of humor on French television. So it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. As a result, he was censored and fired from I don't know how many radio shows that he was supposed to either run or be invited to, because he knew no boundaries. He mocked politicians, he mocked personalities. Sometimes he wasn't very nice at all. And I guess he really deserved his nickname of Enfant Terrible. But the French loved him. Bonjour, Jen. The French loved him. My uncle, who's passed away now, used to know all of the skits by heart. He would just go in a tirade and just recite the whole thing by heart. He loved Coluche, and my uncle was a pure product of 1968. He had been on the barricades, and he loved Coluche. But what Coluche did, like a lot of clowns, was that he used humor to get serious messages across. And he poked fun of everyone, even the French. He would make fun of the French, and the French would laugh. He would say, you know, when he mocked them for being racist, for being anti-Semitic, for being too set in their ways, they would still laugh. Not everybody laughed, to be fair. Not everybody liked his sense of humor. And traditional France, the old France that had survived World War II, the 1960s, that France really didn't care much for Coluche. They thought he was vulgar, he was very controversial, they didn't care for that. Now, in the middle of all this glory and fame, Coluche found a way to have a family. He had met this young woman here named Véronique, who, unlike him, was from a very bourgeois background, and they had had 2 boys together, Marius and Romain. And when Coluche made enough money, he bought a beautiful home in the 14th arrondissement, which literally was across from his old childhood neighborhood, across the Beltway or the peripheric. He was just within Paris, but he could almost, with his motorcycle, it took him 10 minutes to go to his mom's house on the other side of the peripheric. It was really close to the Parc Montsouris, if you know where the park is. Now, there's something interesting about the lifestyle he had in his house. In this house, he created a very bohemian lifestyle that really resembled him. He would have friends stop by all the time. Here he is with Veronique and their many kittens. He loved cats. You can see kittens all over him. He must have just had a litter of these kittens. There are a few here. And the house was... The decor must have been something else. They lived on the first floor, second American floor, and then the friends were entertained downstairs. And you had everything downstairs. The dining room was set up as a Parisian brasserie with huge tables where friends could gather. There was a swimming pool outside. The motorcycles were parked outside his collection. You had those pinball machines. There was a pool table. It was like a big playground. And some people have commented that once he was really famous, it was a little bit like visiting, Coluche was like visiting a king a little bit. You know, I called him the court jester earlier and said he became king in the end of his life, king of hearts. But at the time, it was a little bit like visiting the king at court. Even François Mitterrand, the socialist president, once came and had dinner at his house, actually, which is interesting. But not everybody was famous. Some people were famous. Here are his friends. Imagine the scene. I mean, they would come and have dinner. Some of them would stay overnight or for several nights. If you look at this picture, you see his wife here. You see Gérard Lanvin, who became a really famous actor. You see Thierry Lhermitte also, who became a very famous actor. So all these people would be there. It was like a big, happy family. And we will see down the road, that it took a toll on his marriage, because it wasn't easy to have all these people around. But he was very generous and he wanted people around him. He wanted his friends around him. Let's see now what got him in trouble. Another quote by Coluche. If voting could change anything, they would have prohibited it a long time ago. That's not entirely wrong. The right has won the elections. The left has won the elections. When will France win the elections? So this shows a lot of, I would say he didn't really trust politics and politicians. He came from a poor neighborhood. He had seen people struggle all his life. He had seen the successive governments, and nothing had changed. So one of his favorite things to do was to poke fun of politicians. In 1980, for better or for worse, he decided to go one step further. He surprised everybody 1 year away from the next presidential election by saying he would be a candidate. He would be joining the race on behalf of all minorities. There he is, the candidate, sitting at a table, drinking red wine, probably being really funny, mocking the president, who at the time was Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, or the main opponent, who at the time was François Mitterrand, the socialist leader of the Socialist Party. So everybody was mocking, the French were laughing, politicians were not really paying attention. And then after a few months, he was all over TV. And after a few months, there was a poll that revealed that 16% of French electors were considering voting for him. So everything changed at that point because the politicians realized that he was a real threat, and other people as well. So he started receiving threats. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, the president, said that Coluche was trying to ridicule the French Republic. Mitterrand had some of his entourage approach his entourage. And then at some point, he received death threats from an extremist group, which he didn't really take seriously until his manager was assassinated. So you could see that things really took a turn for the worse. And in February of 1981, he gave a press conference with a pretty grim face, though he was still smiling, and said that things had stopped being fun for him. And if that wasn't fun for him, then how would he make people laugh? The truth is, he was really shaken up, and that was bravado, but he was really shaken up at what had happened. I mean, think about it. His manager had been assassinated, and nobody knew by whom. So eventually, the election went on, so that's when he was still laughing. Didn't last very long. And eventually, the election wrapped up. It went back to politicians, professional politicians, as it tends to do. And on the left, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing left the Élysée Palace and lost the election to the next president, who was François Mitterrand, the socialist president, who ended up serving 2 terms. And at the time, the terms were 7 years. So he served from 1981 to 1995. After this, after the debacle of the campaign, his wife, Véronique, the wife, left Coluche. She had had enough of the bohemian lifestyle in the big house. She had had enough of the threats, and maybe she had been scared too for the kids and other people in the family during this whole episode. And the sad thing is that this divorce sent him over the edge. And Coluche was a party animal who had fought addictions all his life, like I said. But once his wife left him, that became a big problem. The drinking increased. He went from cocaine to heroin. He even disappeared for a few months and sought refuge in Guadeloupe, where he owned a house. He loved Guadeloupe. He had gone fairly often from the late 70s on. And in Guadeloupe, he tried to clean his act a little bit, and he tried to bring his friends over to kind of recreate the atmosphere he had created at that house in the 14th. And all of that made him very depressed, though, very self-destructive even. And what really got to him was the suicide of one of his best friends who had visited him in Guadeloupe. You remember that I pointed him out when Coluche started in the theater? He was Patrick de Véro, who was not only handsome, was also a very talented actor with a brilliant career ahead of him. But one day he shot himself with a rifle. And for Coluche, this was just the last straw. It was really difficult. Here you see them when they've both started. Patrick de Véro is on the left and Coluche is here. So it was really the last straw. And he went full on with the addictions, the womanizing, and so forth. His quote says here, "I am capable of the best and the worst, but in the worst, I am the best." Well, at least he knew himself. But Coluche was resilient. Like many people who came from the street and know how to survive, Coluche was very resilient. In 1984, he surprised everybody. It was a comeback, you might say, and he surprised everybody when he starred in a very good movie by Claude Berry named Ciao Pantin, So Long Puppet. And nobody expected Coluche, who had been in many comedies, funny movies, because he was a funny guy. He was the clown. Nobody expected Coluche to be able to pull off such a serious role. The guy was pumping gas in a gas station. He was pretty much a loser. As you could see, he drinks. He makes friends with the wrong people. There was some violence. He's down on his luck. Just a very sad story. And Coluche didn't crack a smile. He was just perfect. And he was awarded the French Academy Award, César, for Best Actor that year. And he was back. This was basically the beginning of Coluche returning back to fame and trying to get his life back on track. He joined the very selective club of funny French actors who had managed to become excellent in dramatic roles. I don't know if you know them, but Rému, Fernandel, Bourvil, and you can think also of Robin Williams, who could do that very, very well. So this was the end of the challenging years. After that, for the rest of his short life, he was back on track, and he was just about to tackle what would become his most important achievements, really. If you remember, in the mid-1980s, there were a lot of events organized in favor of good causes. You had Live Aid, and in France, we had an organization known as Touche pas à mon pote. You see their logo was Touche pas à mon pote. It was like a yellow hand that they would raise, and it meant, don't touch my buddy. Don't touch my buddy. And this is an example. Here's the slogan here with the hand. This is an example of the stuff they posted. An Arab in Lyon, a Jew in Paris, it's always a buddy they kill. And they really fought against racism and anti-Semitism. And Coluche joined them. In fact, there was a huge concert, Place de la Concorde in Paris, with Guy Bedos. Now, you may have heard of Guy Bedos, who is a very popular comedian, stand-up comic, and I shared some information on my Facebook page about his funeral on Thursday. He died just a few years ago at age 85, and he was buried at the Mass was celebrated in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and I shared some information. So Guy Bedos was on stage with him and other celebrities, and that was the first thing he did in 1985 to fight actively for other people. The other thing he did was to join SOS Ethiopia. A lot of French celebrities and artists had joined forces to fight against hunger in Africa. And this was critical for Coluche because this is where he met two guys who would become essential to the next step in his life. This was Jean-Jacques Goldman, one of my favorites, and Daniel Balavoine. They were at the top of their game in the mid-1980s. Everybody knew them, and they were both activists. They were also, another one who was really an activist was Michel Berger, very talented songwriter, composer, and his wife, who was France Gall. They're all gone now, except for Jean-Jacques Goldman. They've all met untimely deaths, sadly. Coluche, who never forgot where he came from, said, "God said, I will split everything in half. The rich will have food. The poor will have an appetite." I think that's actually quite good. This is excellent. So Coluche, who did not like that, decided to take matters in his own hands. He was on the radio. He had his own radio show on Europe 1, Europe 1, and that's one show that he didn't get fired from, so that was good. There was definitely improvement. And one day, he was on the radio with the lady he did it with. Her name is Maryse on Europe 1. And he kind of starts talking in the microphone and he said, well, you know, and he talked like that. I have an idea. I have a little idea. It's a bit like this. If there are brands or companies out there who hear me and who would like to sponsor a free soup kitchen, we'd start in Paris at first and then we could spread to France and other cities. And that's how he launched what became the biggest project of his life and one of the biggest, most famous organizations in France. And Coluche had been aware that a lot of supermarkets, a lot of restaurants threw away food. They just threw it away because it was costly to store it. And he determined that there was a way to get that food back to feed people who really needed it. And at that point, he launched his charity. The charity was named Les Restos du Coeur. Les Restaurants du Coeur, the restaurant of the heart, everybody called them Les Restos du Coeur. And this little logo has been famous for many, many years. And of course, they wanted, their goal was to deliver hot meals and food packages to the homeless and low and very low income families. So Coluche got organized, used his fame and his friends' fame to get companies, sponsors, and individual donors, a lot of them, to support his project. And he thought it would be really short-lived. It was September of '85. He thought the soup kitchens would run through the winter and then they would wrap up in March. And he thought it'd be a one-year type of deal. And it wasn't a one-year kind of deal because it's still going on today. But listen to this. Their goal the first year was to serve 2,500 to 3,000 meals in Paris. By the end of the first season in March of '86, they had served more than 8 million meals all over France with 5,000 volunteers. And that was an amazing achievement. Now, Coluche didn't stop there. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of him being very proud at one of the original soup kitchen that was in Paris, Les Restos du Coeur. And you can totally tell that he had found his new crowd, his new family there. Here he is holding this young child with the people who came for help. And here's singer Daniel Guichard, who's a wonderful guy too. And here they are helping people. So this became his life's mission. I mean, he was definitely back on track after that. Daniel Balavoine, remember I mentioned Daniel Balavoine as well as Jean-Jacques Goldman, the ones he did the SOS Ethiopia concert with. Daniel Balavoine was going to be the godfather of the Restos du Coeur. That's why you see them there. But unfortunately, Daniel Balavoine died in a terrible helicopter crash during a famous race in Africa. And so that was a big blow to Coluche as well. He'd already lost a couple friends and he lost Balavoine. Michel Berger also died a few months later. So that was a pretty bad year. But he could count on Jean-Jacques Goldman, who was such a talented songwriter that he could write anything and it became a popular tune. So Jean-Jacques Goldman wrote La chanson des restos, the song of the Restos. Very famous people, actors like Yves Montand, who had befriended Coluche and had a lot of clout in the political circles. They helped with the song and the song sold really, really well. So that helped raise money for Les Restos. And they decided to keep doing the singing thing every year. And in the first few years, the 5 artists or singers that would perform to raise funds for Les Restos du Coeur under Jean-Jacques Goldman's patronage or tutelage, I should say, were Jean-Jacques Goldman, Johnny Hallyday, Michel Sardou, Eddie Mitchell, I don't know what he's doing to Sardou's ear, and Véronique Sanson. And these guys were the ones, the original band, group of friends that supported Coluche. It became pretty quickly, within a few years, it became an annual concert where more and more celebrities joined. They went on tour even. And the CD they release every year helps finance the Restos du Coeur before the season starts. Now, the cute story about these guys and all the ones that followed them is that they were nicknamed Les Enfoirés. You may have seen the name on all the CDs they sell every year. Les Enfoirés is actually not a compliment, it's an insult, and I will translate it politely with bastards. But it was a word that Coluche used affectionately to refer to his friends. He called them enfoirés. And so don't be surprised if you buy the CD in September when it comes out, if it says Les Enfoirés, the bastards, because it's stuck. It just stay there. Unfortunately, oh, here they are, Les Enfoirés. This was last fall. So now you have about 35 celebrities, actors, comedians, singers, and they tour. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and they raise a lot of money. And here is Coluche's picture. That's my favorite picture of him. That's always there. Now, you remember I told you our friend liked motorcycles and speed. Well, he was actually pretty good at it because he set a new world speed record on a motorcycle. He even joined that race from Paris to Dakar in Africa where Daniel Balavoine died. So he liked speed. That had always been his thing. And he rode motorcycles most of his life. Unfortunately, in June of 1986, Coluche was riding from Cannes in southern France where he had a home from Cannes where he was with his friends to Opio where he had a home, and he was working on the show he was going to do in the fall, so he was working really hard, and they went on a bike ride, and those roads down there are very treacherous if you've ever driven on them. There are a lot of curves and visibility is not always very good. Long story short, Coluche hit a truck. He hit a truck full speed ahead with his helmet on, though at first they said he wasn't wearing one. He was wearing one, and he wasn't going that fast, but he couldn't avoid the truck, and he died instantly, just dead, on the side of the road in front of his two friends. And France was shocked. He was 41 years old. He was as popular as he could be after riding this first season of the Restos du Coeur successfully just 3 months earlier. And France was just shocked. And you see the newspapers that says Ciao Pantin, which is the title of that movie. So long, puppet. This one says Ciao Coluche. Even the people who had not liked him as a stand-up comedian, as a comic, who thought he was vulgar, if you ask them in the street, journalists were walking around in the street asking them, what do you think about Coluche? They would say, he was a good person. He was a good person. So even the people who did not care for his style recognized that it was a big loss. He was buried in Montrouge, in the town where he had grew up, and everyone showed up at his funeral, a lot of his celebrity friends, a lot of unknown people as well. But very importantly, l'Abbé Pierre showed up. Now, I don't know if you know l'Abbé Pierre, but with Coluche and Jean-Jacques Goldman, he's probably one of the most popular French people of all time. L'Abbé Pierre did a lot more than Coluche to help the poor. He did it in the second half of the 20th century after World War II, when the French were starving, with a very famous appeal on the radio in 1954, asking French people to go to the street and help the people who were dying from the cold. And he became this almost a star, really, but he fought all his life for the poor people. He created an organization that is worldwide. Here's a younger Abbé Pierre in the 50s. It was called Emmaüs. It's pronounced Emmaüs. I'm sure you've seen it. And through that, he fed people and he gave them a new purpose in life. He gave them jobs. He tried to get them busy, teach them new jobs. So Abbé Pierre showed up. He was a friend of Coluche's because Coluche had written very generous checks to him. In fact, the legend has it, Coluche had found his blue overalls at one of the used clothing Emmaüs centers and after that he kept writing checks to l'Abbé Pierre once he was famous. So they had a lot in common. On the day of the funeral, the Abbé Pierre declared, he was older then, if you hear someone say that Coluche respected nothing, tell them it is not true. I stand witness. And when you have somebody like l'Abbé Pierre who says something like that about you, then you know you've done something right. So all over France today, in Paris and outside Paris, you will see streets or squares or cultural centers named after Coluche. Here's his grave at the cemetery of Montrouge. There are always a lot of flowers there. Here is a square where he lived that has been changed. The name has been changed to be Place Coluche some years ago. And you can see here his ex-wife, Véronique. And you can see singer Renaud. And you can see one of Coluche's sons, who looks just like his dad. Oh, and that's actress Josiane Balasco. So a lot of places honor Coluche and his memory in France. This is a movie I've never seen called Coluche, and it's named after his first skit, L'histoire d'un mec, the story of a guy. And of course, you don't even need to show his face because everybody knows this is Coluche, even from the back. Here is something they did for the 30th anniversary of his death. It's beautiful. And here is a rose that was named after Coluche. And when they created it, they said, like the rose, he had thorns. Like the rose, he was also very soft, which is probably very true. He was shy. He was a very shy guy, but he felt he had to be the clown, the life of the party. And when he had drunk, he could be out of control. But he was really entertaining, especially when he got invited to radio shows or TV shows, because you never knew where it was going to go. Now, here's the last part of the presentation that I have developed yesterday, because in light of what's happening in France right now, I will explain a little later, but I thought this was important to do. Les Restos du Coeur, that charity that Coluche created 35 years ago, exactly, 35 years ago, is still going strong. It's a national organization, and it's represented in most French regions. So they have about 2,000 soup kitchens or centers where they help people, and 70,000 volunteers. They're also in Belgium and in Germany. The organization is quite impressive because it's very well run with very low overhead, and they manage costs very efficiently, to the extent that 90% of their resources go towards activities. You might say it's better run than the country, actually. One thing to realize is that Véronique Colucci, Coluche's ex-wife, took over as soon as he passed away. She joined the board of directors where she was for 30 years, and she was the president of the board for about 5 years, and she was everywhere. She had started it with Coluche. She was by his side when he started Les Restos du Coeur, so they had remained really good friends. And she was very well liked. Sadly, she was very ill for several years and passed away 2 years ago. When she died, you could see many of Coluche's old friends and even officials actually at her funeral. Jean-Jacques Goldman was there. Everybody was there. So there she is, very proud of Les Restos du Coeur. But she's been gone for a couple years now. Les Restos du Coeur would be nothing without the army of volunteers who work for them. And they are very seriously trained in many different things. And when they join, they have to sign a charter. And one article of the charter said that their participation has to be devoid of political or religious point of view, which, knowing Coluche, is not surprising because he didn't think very highly of religion or of politics. They raise funds by many different ways, and they are very well, they have a lot of connections. They're very good at raising money. This is something they did last fall. For 1 week last fall, if you went to the movies, one ticket purchased meant one meal was going to a person at one of the food kitchens. What is it called? One of the Restos du Coeur. So that's something they did just last fall. They've also inspired a lot of advertising agencies. This one is excellent. It shows that the association has really evolved over the years. It's not just a soup kitchen. They understand that what really matters is to help with social reintegration of the people. Their new logo, or slogan I should say, is Parce qu'un repas ne suffit pas, because a meal is not enough. And this is so clever because, of course, it's in reference to the meals for the soup kitchens, but it's also a reference to l'ardoise, which is this board where French restaurants will list specials, except here it's an ardoise from a child at school. And the explanation is here. This is a list instead of a menu. This is a list of all the things that Les Restos du Coeur do. The first thing, of course, is aide alimentaire, which is feeding people, and then everything else. Helping people find jobs, helping people find housing, helping people in the street, giving them advice on how to run their budget, giving them access to justice, French language workshops, help with homework for the kids, access to internet and classes too, culture, free time, sports, short vacation, and most importantly at the end, estime de soi, self-confidence, self-worth. So they do a lot. It's not just about food anymore, and those advertising campaigns reflect that. This is an excellent one. Here's a homeless person's old home that is for sale, and it says, Paul puts his old life behind him. With the help of the Restos du Coeur, he has found a job, a place to live, and a social life. Mission accomplished. And they do a lot of that. My favorite thing that they do, and I found out about it yesterday, I did not know about it, is this. If you know the Jardin des Plantes in Paris, on the left bank, this beautiful garden where several museums and a small zoo are located, you cross the street and go down to the Seine River, and on this quay called Quai Claude Bernard, there is a former commercial barge. It's huge, and it's called, I don't know if you can read this, La Péniche du Coeur, the barge of the heart. And this is basically an emergency temporary shelter for up to 60 adult males who can find a bed, bathrooms, meals twice a day, clothing, and a chance to socialize with volunteers who also offer classes and workshops. So it's a shelter, it's temporary, but I think this is a really great project that they're doing. And it used to be an older barge, but they raised enough money that 2 years ago, a company actually donated this former commercial barge. And I'm planning to go check it out next week. I'm not sure it's reopened because of COVID-19, and I want to go check it out and make sure. So in case you're wondering, the barge works with 6 salaried workers. One of them is the cook, the chef. And then they have about 160 volunteers who rotate and help serve the meals, and not only serve the meals, but they also sit down with the people, chat with them, basically give them this social connection that some of them miss and crave because they live on the street. Here is the barge again. As you arrive, this is what you see. Now, this is the last part of the presentation. Coluche, his legacy is really the law that was passed in 1988, which he had started pushing for right from the start in the few months that he worked on the project, which allows grants very generous tax deductions to individual donors. A lot of the donors for Les Restos du Coeur are just regular people. And so they passed a law, La Loi Coluche, in 1988, that allows individual donors to get about 75% back. You know, they can deduct 75% of their donation if they donate money to Les Restos du Coeur, which is brilliant. It's really brilliant, and they're very good at doing that. So here is our friend Coluche looking at us with a nice, I love this picture. I think it's a great picture of him. Now, I wanted to develop this part of the presentation today because I've been reading several articles about that. And France, I'm sure, is not the only country where that's being discussed. Because of COVID-19, the virus, I never named the virus, I shouldn't have named it. But because of the virus, a lot of people are losing their jobs, and there's a lot of concern that the people who were already poor, already on the streets before this happened, are going to get worse off. And so we know, France already knows, they're talking about the second wave. Nobody thinks it's going to be a second wave of the virus. They think it's going to be the second wave will be a social wave. And it's going to be deadlier than the virus. Because so many people, in recent years, Les Restos du Coeur have welcomed every year more and more women, single women with children, more and more younger adults, sometimes they're not even 18 years old, more and more retirees who can't make ends meet. And they're really concerned that with the virus and the effect of, what's going to happen over the next few months, it's going to get even worse. And so we all realize that wonderful organizations like Les Restos du Coeur are going to be part of the solution. Everybody knows they will step up and they will work on this. Now, if you want to hear more about Coluche and his legacy, a French student of mine, who's also one of my patrons, Bob, shared this in our private Facebook group, La Bande de Véro, earlier this week. And it's a documentary dedicated to Coluche that will be released on June 21st, on Sunday, June 21st, on TV5 Monde. You know that channel of the French-speaking world? You can access it in the United States. And there's going to be that special on Coluche, which I'm definitely going to watch. I've seen many before, but if it's a new one, I really want to watch it. So thank you, Bob. Yes, it's in TV5 Monde USA, and I know that in France it might be a different channel, so I'll have to see where I can catch it, but I'm pretty sure I can catch it somewhere. So yeah, go Bob. Thank you, Bob. So, this is our friend Renaud. Renaud, he's our friend, but mostly he was Coluche's friend, and this is when he was younger. Now this is Renaud. Renaud has a lot in common with Coluche because he also had a very complicated life, fighting a lot of addictions. He now lives in southern France where he's kind of semi-retired. But what's interesting with Renaud is that, just like Coluche, the public never let him down. There are Facebook groups where people post messages of support to Renaud, make sure he's okay. So like Coluche, he's a shy guy, a very sensitive personality, and he hides that behind a kind of a gruff exterior. So they had a lot in common, and Renaud was a lot younger than Coluche. But they met in those early days of the theater group that they were in together. And so when Coluche died, of course, Renaud was completely crushed. And he wrote a song that we're going to listen to next after a little break, if you're still with me. And the song really was written 2 years after Coluche died. And, it's a sad song, but we will translate it as we usually do and talk about it a little bit. So let's see. I'm going to flip that around and prepare this for later. Voila! Okay, that works. So let's take a little break because I've been talking. Oh, it's not working. My light is not working. Is that okay? Can you still see me? Maybe this one. Ooh, boy, that's bright. What did you think of the presentation? Even if you've seen it before. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I tried to develop the last section. Yes, I do my homework. Well, it's more interesting if there is a good story to tell. I try to tell stories, as you know, that are not told that often, especially in English. That is what I do. And so you need to research those stories. You need to make sure they're approachable and relevant to people who don't necessarily live in France, but who care about France. And that's what I tried to do in those apéros when I took you to off the beaten path to corners of Paris in France, told you stories like Josephine Baker's story or Coluche's story. Oh, good. I'm glad if you learned a lot. That's the best compliment for a teacher. The best compliment. Yeah, I was a pretty good student, Better than before. Excellent. Then it was worth spending extra time on it yesterday. Yeah, it's yeah, we like to joke. We like to joke. You know, Coluche popularized a style that's always been very famous in France, a type of humor that's satire. And you find this, I mean, Molière was already into that. And you see that with Charlie Hebdo. And those guys were pretty similar to Coluche in that they could be quite rude and rough around the edges. He says, I will miss his apéro. I'm so happy. Oh, thank you, Bob. I'm looking forward to getting a few Saturdays back. Not to say I won't do anything ever again on Saturdays, but it just won't be a weekly event. Yeah. So, and now you can go back to YouTube. So give me likes if you haven't. Every time you watch a video, remember to give me a like and share with your friends, because I'm sure you have Francophile friends who would love seeing these videos, those apéro with Véro on YouTube. I'm building a little video library there. So, and then you have Facebook where I share information every day. The blog where I'm planning to start writing. That's one of the reasons I'm stopping the apéro. I've neglected the blog, and I don't like neglecting my blog, FrenchGirlInSeattle.com, because it all started with the blog 10 years ago, and I don't like when I don't have time to write on my blog. Oh, thank you. That's a blouse I bought in Barge for my birthday weekend. So it was, oh, I'm glad you showed it to the students. That's awesome. Yeah, if you can use it in class, that's wonderful. That's a big compliment, actually. Okay, so are you ready for the song by Monsieur Renaud? Yeah? Okay, so since the slide won't work for some unknown reason, it worked 10 seconds ago. I don't know what happened. Ah, voila. See? Let there be light. Is this the right one? This is the right one. Okay, so we are going to switch this around so you can see the song. And I have my translation, otherwise it's hard if I have to do the I know I haven't thought about doing talks with the Alliance Française, but if you have connections there, I'm interested. I've done a couple talks. I did a talk for WISE, which is an organization in Paris for foreigners who live in Paris. So that was fun. We did an informal chat. So I've done a few things. Yes, just like Oliver, except I haven't written a book like my friend Oliver from the Eiffel Tower yet. Okay, allons-y. So here is the song by Renaud. I will try not to shake too much. It's called Putain de camion, freaking truck. Now, the song is pretty vulgar, and I have toned it down a little, okay? So I didn't see a point of going all out. I just wanted to get the message across because it is a beautiful song. So, the song says, Putain, c'est trop con. Ce putain de camion, mais qu'est-ce qu'il foutait là? What a bummer, that freaking truck. What was it doing there? Putain de vie de merde. T'as roulé dans l'herbe et nous, tu nous plantes là. Freaking shitty life. You rolled in the grass and you ditched us. J'espère au moins que là-haut, il y a beaucoup moins de salauds. I hope that up there, at least, there are fewer bastards. Tu nous laisses avec des chiens, avec les chiens, avec les méchants, les crétins. You leave us with stinking dogs, with the nasty ones and the morons. Sous un soleil qui brille moins fort et moins loin, under a sun that shines less brightly and doesn't reach as far. Je voudrais me blottir dans un coin, avec Marius, avec Romain. I'd like to cower in a corner with Marius and Romain. Those are Coluche's boys. Pleurer avec eux jusqu'à la Saint-Glinglin and weep with them until hell freezes over. Putain, j'ai la rage contre ce virage et contre ce jour-là. I am freaking angry at that bend in the road and at that day où tu t'es vautré, where you crashed. Dire que c'était l'été, dans ma tête, il fait froid. To think that it was summertime, in my head, it's cold. J'espère au moins que là-haut, t'as acheté un vélo. That's unlikely. I hope that up there at least you bought a bike. I think he's riding motorcycle up there. Lolita a plus de parrain, Nous, on n'a plus notre meilleur copain. Lolita has lost her godfather. She is Renaud's daughter. We've lost our best friend. T'étais un clown, mais t'étais pas un pantin. You were a clown, but you weren't a puppet. Enfoiré, on t'aimait bien. Bastard, we liked you. So he uses that word that Coluche gave his friends, enfoiré, that name. Maintenant, on est tous orphelins. Now we're all orphans. Putain de camion, putain de destin, tiens ça craint. Freaking truck, freaking fate. It all sucks, you know. Enfoiré, on t'aimait bien. Bastard, we liked you. Maintenant, on est tous orphelins. Putain de camion, putain de destin, tiens ça craint. Now we're all orphans. Freaking truck, freaking fate. It all sucks, you know. So this is the song that Renaud released 2 years after Coluche died. So now we are going to listen to the song, and I'll try to hold it steady for you.
C'est trop con, ce putain de camion. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il foutait là? Putain de vie de merde, t'as roulé dans l'herbe et nous tu nous plantes là. J'espère au moins que là-haut y'a beaucoup moins de salauds. Tu nous laisses avec les chiens, avec les méchants, les crétins, sous un soleil qui brille moins fort et moins loin. Je voudrais me blottir dans un coin, avec Marius, avec Romain, pleurer avec eux jusqu'à la Saint-Glinglin. Putain, j'ai la rage contre ce virage et contre ce jour-là où tu t'es vautré, dire que c'était l'été. Dans ma tête il fait froid. J'espère au moins que là-haut t'as acheté un vélo. Lolita, plus de parrain, nous on n'a plus notre meilleur copain. T'étais un clown mais t'étais pas un pantin. Enfoiré, on t'aimait bien. Maintenant on est tous orphelins. Putain de camion, putain de destin, tiens, ça craint. Enfoiré, on t'aimait bien. Maintenant on est tous orphelins. Putain de camion, putain de destin, tiens, ça craint. Ça craint.
I'm going to ease into the kitchen because my battery is running low. Oop. Sorry. There we go. I'll be right back. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. I didn't want the battery to die on me. What do you think? It's a sad song. You know what I've noticed for the first time as I'm listening to it today, and I've listened to it many times, the music is a little bit like a circus music. At times, it sounds like, you know, when you see the circus. Didn't you think that it sounded like a circus music a little bit? Like when the clowns are going around? Yeah, it's a very sad song. Renaud was crushed, and Renaud, he's not doing very well. You know, he's in his 60s now, mid-60s, and he, like I said, he's also fighting a lot of addictions. His is drinking, and losing a friend like Coluche was certainly a big deal because Coluche was his daughter's godfather, and he was so present. He was so big, you know, he was bigger than life. So it was sad when he died. A lot of people just had a hard time with it. Anyway, enough sadness. We don't need any more sadness, but I hope you've enjoyed the story of this great guy. Coluche, you know, he was someone else. He was someone else, and he's done something wonderful. I've got to tell you that preparing for this has actually inspired me to go check out Les Restos du Coeur. And last night I was this close to sending them an email to see if I could volunteer for them, and I probably will do it next week. If I can free a little bit of time from some of my projects, I'll be happy to volunteer for them. I've been looking for a good cause, and I've been looking for a way of meeting people in Paris as well. So I think that's going to do it. I think Coluche will remain with me for the next few months. Hopefully I can work something out with them. I mean, they do need French teachers. They teach French to people who need it, and help them work on their resumes. And so I figure maybe I can do something for them. As long as I don't cook, they will be fine. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, my friends, we will see each other again, you know, on Facebook, on YouTube. I'll shoot more videos. I'll do more live videos, impromptu live videos. If you want to see more, videos, more live events, I would recommend that you join me on Patreon, patreon.com/FrenchGirlInSeattle, because it's a wonderful community. I have about 175 people there now. I think if some of them are following, they can tell you if they're happy with it and what they get in return from their modest membership each month. I try to make it worth their while. Tomorrow on Sunday at 7 p.m. Paris time, I'm going to have an informal chat with my patrons. We have our own Facebook group, a private group. They've been trading travel stories and pictures of beautiful places in France, and I thought I would pop in and interrupt them tomorrow and have a little catch-up chat with them. So these are some of the perks that you get as a patron, and I would urge you to consider this. It helps me too, because I need to find the time and the resources to put together more projects like this one, like Apéro with Véro. So any support is really welcome. And when the replay for this one is shared on YouTube or for any of my YouTube videos, make sure to read the YouTube notes, because I share more information about things I mentioned during the walk or the presentation. And if you want to help me, join Patreon. All that information is in there as well. Okay? So it's great. Oh, thanks, Sharon. Thank you. Oh, thanks. I'm getting some love from my patrons. Thank you very much. So, we always wrap up on the apéro, and I don't see any reason to change this tradition, though I'm running a little behind like last week, but that's one of the perks of YouTube, because on Instagram, they would cut me off after an hour, which was extremely rude. So that's why we left the Instagram. So I'm going to show you the apéro that I prepared, and today is a little bit different. I thought I'd do something different, so I'm going to show you what I have here. Let's see. Do you see this? Let's see, if I do this, you should be able to see. Voila. Okay, so today I did something. Some of you may know this already. Now you're thinking, oh my gosh, she prepared a giant hamburger. It is not a giant hamburger. This is referred to as a pain surprise, a surprise bread. Typically, if you have a good boulanger, baker, you order it from the boulanger before you have guests coming over for an apéro. You know that the apéro can be dînatoire in that it replaces dinner, so you need to serve things that are a little bit more filling. So le pain surprise is perfect for that because what it is, and the boulanger version would look a lot better than this. This is a version I picked up from my favorite, everybody's favorite frozen food store, which is Picard. And they do a really good job. It's a lot smaller, but I don't think it's completely thawed yet. I'm going to wait a couple of hours before I eat it. But le pain surprise is called this way because you have different layers. I'm going to do this. You have different layers. So every time somebody helps themselves to a small slice, it's a different feeling because you have one different feeling on each layer. So it's a surprise in that you don't know what you're going to get. So for this one, I went for the vegetarian one. The pain surprise Mediterranean version. So as you can see or not, the first layer has feta cheese, fava beans, and mint. The second layer has tomatoes, mozzarella, pesto. I can smell it from here. The third one is manchego cheese with piquillo. And the last one is hummus. Oh, beet hummus. Well, isn't that healthy? Gonna be super healthy. And then for dessert, I got myself some fresh cherries at the market this morning. And these cuties are called bigarro. When we were kids, we would put them on our ears like earrings. That was a lot of fun. They're smaller than other cherries. They're very good. And this is the end of the season from my Gariguette strawberries, the tiny, small, fruity, very juicy strawberries that start early on in the season. And this is the end of the season. And this is probably the last time I'll buy them this year. But I've really enjoyed them. So this is a little bit different this week. I haven't had bread all week, so I thought, be nice to have some bread. So I'm going to do my mini sandwiches, my strawberries, and because it's a special apéro, because it's the last weekly apéro, it may not be the last apéro, but it's the last weekly apéro, I have good stuff. Ta-da! I hope you approve. Sancerre, the lovely, crisp, dry, white wine made with Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. It comes from another tradition. We've got to go, where is it? See here, the Centre Val de Loire. This is the Loire Valley in pink. It comes from number 18. You see it? This is where Sancerre is. The Cher, C-H-E-R. So I'm going to pour myself some, delightful sound. Voila. And then I'm going to flip this over again. I might wait to eat. I don't think it's ready to eat yet. Yay! Kind of. Voila! I'm back. Mes amis, am I back? It's cutting off. Are you back? If you have been thinking, of okay, saying goodbye. It's gonna cut. I know it. It's gonna cut off. Join me on Facebook Live tomorrow on the private group. Join Patreon. Come with us. Join the fun. Have a great weekend, my friends. À bientôt. Au revoir.